Okay, I guess we will have some people still coming in and out. But meanwhile, since I was asked here, but who are the people in the room? So I just want people to maybe raise a hand, those of you who somehow directly participate in Standard, just for us to see. Actually, a lot. And anyone who uses standards in practice in their business, in their operations here, okay, that's some, maybe. Okay, good. Okay, so we just wanted to see when we keep the door open, because I think there will be some migration. But since I know that, Barbara, you also don't have a lot of time, so I guess we will start with introduction. So I think through the day today, we've heard a lot starting in the morning about what sovereignty means to us and how we move towards sovereign European digital market. And then we had different bits and pieces of companies presenting in some panels. We had cybersecurity, we had the data, and we are still moving towards the evening, towards AI and a few other topics. All of these are parts of the puzzle into how to create digital future that is European, that is sovereign, that is secure, and that makes our companies competitive and our society more democratic as well. So standards is definitely one of the pieces in this puzzle, and perhaps even at the center of all of it. So some of you know, because I know your faces well and I hear you very often in debates in Brussels, and some maybe know less of what is happening with standardization in Europe at the moment, because it's a big moment when some things might change for hopefully better. And hence, I have Barbara Bonvisuto here today, the director from DG Grow, who will explain us a little bit more of what is in mind of a regulator, what problems do you see, and how you see Europe moving ahead, and why now, perhaps.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. We are in a very critical moment for the time being, as Justina mentioned, and we have started the process of revision of the standardization regulation. Actually, the public consultation is open. For those of you who wish to participate, I just remind you, you will still have a bit less of a couple of weeks. So please do contribute. It is ongoing until the 17th of December. Why are we embarking in this huge and substantial work? Well, competitiveness obviously is very high on the EU agenda, in particular of this commission. But I think we should keep in mind that competitiveness today means something which may be different than it was 50 years ago. The geopolitical context has dramatically changed, and economic measures are weaponized, as you can see with the export control from China, for example, on rare earth or chips. And so we need to take that in mind when we say, as you were mentioning, obviously standards are key for the competitiveness of our economy. They are key to allow innovation, to allow a fully functioning single market, and this is in particular true for SMEs, who really benefit by having standards. They benefit from economies of scale, from market access, they benefit from interoperability. Standards obviously are important for innovation. And there, referring to, changing geopolitical context, the competitiveness pressures are enormous. We see that there are our competitors are also looking at standards as a key geopolitical instrument, and they are equipping themselves with the tools to win this race. We were in the past, we have been traditionally, especially when it comes to international standardization fora such as ISO or ICE, we have been very much influential, very much dictating the agenda. This is now being challenged. We see strategy from our main competitors to be more and more dominant in the international standardization area. And not only, we used to be standard sector now, in certain cases, look at batteries for electric vehicles, we may end up being standard taker. But not only that, we may also risk losing the Brussels effect. So the fact that we were able to export our standards in other countries, I mean, we now, for example, with certain countries, we are still able to certain extent influence. For example, we had a good example recently with India on digital identification, where they are following our steps. But we also see that this is a policy which is, for example, very much promoted by China with their Belt and Road Initiative, then also coming with standards and money. But that's not the topic of the discussion today. So it is clear that we need a well-functioning standardization system. But it is also clear that the standardization system currently is struggling to keep up with all these challenges and with the fast pace of technological innovation. Sometimes it seems that we are still living in the 20th century when it comes to standardization, where we have digitalization levels still quite low, PDF documents, paper trails. When we carried out the evaluation, more than half of the companies which we have interviewed, they have told us that they consider the bureaucratic issues and procedures as a big challenge for them to participate, but also as a bit bottleneck in terms of having a fast development of standards. And indeed, the standardization system is low. I think we have mentioned this many times, but if you look at the Chinese strategy on standardization, their objective is to have standards developed in 18 months. If we look at the average timing within the EU, we are at 6 years. Obviously, this is not all the fault of the European Standardization Organization. This is everybody has its responsibilities. We see on average, for example, it takes 2 years to develop a standardization request, then 3 years for drafting the standards, and then yet another year before publishing the standard. So we need to be able to cut these timelines, and we can only do that if each of us takes a share of responsibility in the system. Quality is also a problem. I mean, some of you do not like that, but you know that we have put in place what we call the HAS consultant system. So we have consultants who help us in addressing the quality of standards, and 70% of standards that we have received, they, at least at the first iteration, they received a negative assessment from the US consultants. So there is clearly an issue there with quality. And then also there is an issue with inclusiveness. Well, there I think Jon heard me saying that also recently in other occasion. I think we have one of the most inclusive systems in the world. This being said, we have these Annex 3 organizations requirements in the standardization regulation. We have provisions to facilitate the access of SMEs to the standardization development process. We are also funding SMEs and civil society, yet it is not enough. This does not translate in a perception of SMEs thinking that their voice is actually heard. So there is also something to do. There's a problem of expertise. We are lacking experts. We don't manage collectivity. I mean, in the standardization world, to sell standardization as something which is worth investing in, and which can also be attractive. And this is something which we have all to take in consideration and see what we can do. And then, well, I was saying we are losing ground internationally. I think there was a study from the World Bank finding that the number of secretariats in ISO, which are held by China, they have increased by more than 50% in the period from 2012 to 2022. Clearly this is a trend which is only increasing. So we definitely need to change. And the main question here is, are incremental changes enough? Or do we need more in-depth revision of the system? Well, first, we recognize the value of the system and we recognize the value of a bottom-up approach. And we also believe that the overall setup with the presumption of conformity and not, with the regulators already setting out essential requirement is the good one. And the system so far has also been one probably of the most cost efficient that we could have. Still, as I said, all the challenges, so clearly we need to do something. Now, in terms of what we can do within more or less the boundary of the current system, I think we all very much agree there is scope to improving the processes, the procedure, to go towards further digitalization, to improve quality. The standardization organization have put in place, for example, a quality control system. We also think that we should, from the Commission side, try to anticipate more. So if, for example, we are negotiating a legal text which we know will require then standards for its implementation, we can upfront start a process of engaging with the standardizers, making sure that future needs are anticipated, also making sure that we start developing the community of experts which then is ready to, work on the development of the standards as soon as we have the legal text adopted. But this we can already do, and we are trying. We have also processes with the ISO, for example, for fast-tracking the development of certain standards, and we will need to see whether this actually deliver. And then we have the high-level forum, which has raised the level of attention, also the political level of attention, and which we will come, in the next months, we will come to you with ideas how to make this forum more relevant and strategic. This being said, we think that we need also legal revision. And first of all, we need to open the system to competition, but open to competition not against the European Standardization Organization, but with them. There are cases where it is clear that certain expertise is not there with the European Standardization Organization, or there may be cases where we know that there are solutions elsewhere already. So why shouldn't we be able to make use of these alternative paths and solutions which are already there? And that could be within the standardization system as we know now. So instead of going for a full-fledged harmonized standards, maybe we have some light standardization deliverable, or it could be beyond the standardization system of the 3 ISOs. There may be standards developed by other standardization organizations that industry is already somehow using or referring to, and then, well, if we are collectively convinced that this provide a good benchmark, then why don't use them? Or in certain cases, we may know that expertise is somewhere else, and then maybe we could launch call for proposal and see whether there's a consortia somewhere who could develop standards, for example. So this is, one of the ideas that we are exploring, making sure that there are alternatives within and outside the system. And obviously, you know that we have also presented the Omnibus, so-called Omnibus 4, where we are generalizing also the option of having a common technical specifications adopted by the Commission as implementing acts in case the standardization system doesn't deliver. And again there, because I know this is a very controversial topic with industry, this is meant to be a fallback option. In case the standardization system does not deliver, it is the regulators have even, I would say, the obligation to make sure that the benchmark for industry is there. And this is in order to provide predictability to industry and and especially SMEs who need to have a reference. Then access to standards. This is another big issue. We have found, thanks to the very good cooperation with the European standardization organizations, ways to respond to the challenge of the stemming from the court case and making accessible standard in the short term. We are still trying to find solution with ISO IEC, because you may be aware that we are not receiving ISO IEC standard. We have not been receiving them for the past 18 months, I think. But I hope, I'm looking at Andrea, that we can be optimistic that the solution can be found soon. Still, this may not be the end of the process. I think the direction is pretty much clear. Standards, or at least what is needed in terms of the legal value of standards, what is needed for presumption of conformity will need to be freely accessible. So we need to see how we can implement that in a way that the business model of the standardization organization is not put at risk, and that there is still interest, obviously, for all the stakeholders to participate in the standardization work, being aware of IP, issues and the interest, the legitimate economic interest that has to be safeguarded. And then, well, inclusiveness, we already said. We believe that digitalization will already be a very good tool to promote inclusiveness, make participation in the standardization system easier, less costly. But for sure, we need to be, we need to be sure that whatever we bring in terms of efficiency in the process indeed translates into SMEs and civil society not complaining anymore, basically, that their voices are not being heard. So we have quite ambitious ideas, and we are assessing then several options with our consultant. We will, the idea is that we will finalize our impact assessment towards the end of the first semester next year, and then we will come with a legal proposal the third quarter of next year. We are, standards, it's an important element and pillar of the internal market, but they work together with the other important pillars of the internal market. And here I'm referring in particular to the new legislative framework, which describes the way standards are used as means for presumption of conformity, but I'm also referring to market surveillance, which then ensures that products are compliant with the rules and wherever relevant with the harmonized standards. So we are, since there are so many synergies among these three acts, we are running the revision process of these three legal acts in parallel, with the idea of presenting them in a package which we call European Product Act, and which eventually can even translate into one single act, or maybe two, where we only put NLF and market surveillance together, and standardization we keep it separate. We haven't yet made up our mind on that, but I think this is also an opportunity to look at standards not just in isolation, but as a key pillar which has to work with the other pillars, and all of the pillars have to be effective and sound, because you know, our system is as strong as the weakest link. So quite a lot of work ahead of us, and we really count on the participation of all of you, because in the end, standardization is really a collaborative exercise. So, as I said, we all have rights and obligations and responsibilities in the system, and it would be good if we manage to have it, reformed in a way that we can all live with. I will stop at that. I apologize because I will have to leave soon, but I leave you in the very good hands of Federico Musso, who is leading in the standardization unit the process of revision of the standardization regulation.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you very much. I know that many of us probably want to comment, react, and have different feelings about different points you raised, but indeed we will have Federico here in the panel able to stand the ground. But I think the main and overarching point is something which all of us, the players here in the room, would agree, is that what we all want to achieve is that standards created in Europe are the ones serving industry, but also bringing Europe forward, making it more competitive globally, and that our European standards are the ones used internationally, or it's us, the European organizations, European industry, that also international level manages to leverage our power and set the tone. So I think with this ESOs, companies, big and small, we all agree, and we definitely support any changes that would allow us to get to this beautiful picture. So thank you so much for your remarks. And before we start discussing, because I can feel the tension, I can feel the need to react. I, however, want to stress that besides being in Digital SME Summit, this session is organized together with Small Business Standards. And here we have a new Secretary General for SBS that some of you might know and some maybe have a chance to meet. So thank you very much in your first month, Jon, for taking possibility and joining us. So Jon Ensenove, Secretary General of SBS, will give a short welcome to us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Justina. And let me start by thanking you all for coming today, and obviously thank you to Digital SME Alliance for organizing and co-organizing this with us, and for being a member of Small Business Standards and a key contributor in our mandate to defend the voice of SMEs in standardization. I had taken some notes, but Barbara has done such a comprehensive description of what are the challenges that we face. I'm not going to repeat myself, but I would like to use these 5 minutes just that I'm given to bring the eyes of the SMEs to the conversation. And I would like to start by one of the elements that Barbara mentioned about inclusiveness. And we SMEs, we are always in deficit to contribute compared to big players. And that is a reality that is not going to change in the coming future. But it is absolutely true that the European system, the European standardization system, is the most inclusive of the systems that are around the world. And I'm talking from personal experience, working in Asia, China, United States. As an SME, wanted to contribute to standardization, I'd rather be in Europe. Yeah? Now, the fact that the design, from my point of view, could work, doesn't mean that there are no things that we have to improve. Yeah? But we also have to be careful in reinventing things when Europe is already the benchmark in the world on what it is to be inclusive. And maybe the question is not we have to be more inclusive, but to understand what is better inclusiveness for SMEs. Understanding where SMEs fall in the value chain, not only of an industry sector, but in the development of the standards. Are they the technology providers? Are they the ones that are delivering complementary services? Are they users? And depending on where they are, what type of contribution we want to see and what type of constitutions of the technical bodies we would like to see. The second element I want to highlight is the importance of digitalization. I think that we will make a very bad favor to SMEs if we assume that the digital side is just a sectorial element. Now it goes across all the different sectors. And it is important that from the small business standards voice, we're able to extract what are the elements that are common to the sectors as a result of digitalization. Yeah? And one of the things that we want to fight, and this goes across many sectors, is that standards can be used unintentionally or intentionally as a way for vertical integration, so that there are proprietary solutions in the access to data that make it impossible for SMEs down the line to serve as installers, maintainers, or whatever complementary service to those sectors. And that happens across the sectors. That is not a digital sector. The link to that, I think the third idea I wanted to share is what SMEs are. And I think that when we look at the need for competitiveness, which is so powerfully expressed in the Draghi report, and we all agree that we need to figure out the way to leapfrog in the new technologies so that we don't lag behind other competitors in the market. Yeah? But at the same time, it is very important to acknowledge that SMEs are the core for the resilience of our industry fabric. Yeah? It is the fact that we have thousands of SMEs on the everyday life that are never going to be unicorns, but the fact that they exist and they deliver services and that they are able to complement big suppliers, that actually makes Europe independent economically. Without SMEs, Europe cannot be economically independent. Yeah? And the final thought about that is about standards. And I think that it is obvious. Barbara said it. Standards nowadays are a geopolitical industrial policy tool, and I think that that is obvious. But it's also, in the last decades, it has moved from a purely technical element to also a way of, for big companies, on positioning on the market. Yeah? It's a market strategy. It's not only a technical element. And I think that it is very important from the SMA point of view that we fight to recuperate, at least in part, the main core of standards, which is interoperability. Yeah? If we don't have full interoperability in the standards, which is locking the market for SMEs, that is a given. So, a lot of work for us ahead, as Barbara said. I'm not going to take much more of your time, but there are some homeworks for us for small business standards, and we acknowledge that. And one of the things that we have to do better is to be able to clearly define what are the challenges for our SMEs and communicate it broadly to the national standards bodies, to the European Commission, to policymakers, so that they can identify what is exactly for this type of standards in this part of the value chain, what works and what doesn't work in the standardization work, and therefore, what is the level of access and the level of inclusion that we need in that particular part. Yeah? It is also on our end, something that is already happening and that we're not able to communicate well, which is the impact that we have when experts from small business standards, funded by the European Commission, are able to contribute to the technical committees. And we have the evidence that when they do that, standards are better for SMEs, but are better in general. And we have to show that value. And we have to improve our capacity to educate SMEs in how it benefits them to at least to know that they can contribute some ways, because it's difficult that an SME individually can contribute, but we can create the platforms for them to do that. But also educate technical committees. Yeah? Because often the result are standards that don't meet the needs for SMEs are purely a lack of understanding of how specific requirements and paragraphs in the standard can hamper SMEs. And we have to train those people. Homework also for the European Commission, funding is essential. We wouldn't be able to do the work we do and the value with that without the commitment of the European Commission to make sure that this system remains being exclusive as it is. And the continuous funding of the overall standardization system, both at European and national level, is a key part of it. Of course, for the standards bodies, the work to continue working with us in what are the ways to make sure that standards remain being of good quality for SMEs, and that in that process also that we balance speed with quality. Yes, for SMEs, it is very important that the standards are quickly on the market because there's nothing worse than legal uncertainty. Yeah? So we need to continue working together. What are those avenues to make sure that we speed up the process so that we understand the value of standards in the geopolitical context and industrial policy without hampering the access and usefulness of SMEs. And we all have to continue working to influence international standardization. While we have a voice, the definitive voice in the European standardization system, fighting for SMEs, which is our case in international standardization, is very hard. And with that, I leave you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jon. We see that you are very passionate for a reason you are here. And indeed, I think what you said, that it's very, very important to recognize and know these SMEs that are the driving force in Europe and that are innovative, that might or might not become unicorns, but will be our industrial base. So actually, I'm very happy that we have two of them as good examples here with us in the panel. And these are actually SMEs by accident, more or less, that you both work on a very essential and basic core layer of all the technology, which is cloud, which I think is really basis for both sovereignty, for making sure that our data is stored here in Europe, stored safely, stored using our standards and compliant with our legislation. So you will hear in a few minutes from these companies and what we do. So thank you very much, Jon. And just a technical remark, Andrea, can I ask you to be a bit cozier and come here, closer to me? It's just for technical, it's a technical request.
Moving away from SBS. I forgive you.
Come closer to the commission.
Yeah, I'll come. Oh, again, so many mixed signals.
Thank you very much, Andrea. So I think we can start, Dario, with you, because you are that one example that you mentioned, and you're also in your work using standard, that is a European standard. So we're interested to know what is your company and how standards help you to become more competitive.
Yes, thank you, Justina. Yes, I'm very pleased to be here representing a small company based in Italy called NextG Cloud. This is just an example. Well, we are a small company. We do what we can do, and we are not a giant, of course, but as an example of what is relevant for us. Work which is technology-based. We are trying to approach the market, but also see the value of the standard as a long-term investment. So we do, okay, very simply, we help enterprises to secure their own cloud with some confidential computing solutions and EU sovereign AI solutions for enterprises. So this is our target, the SMEs, but also not neglecting also big companies, big customers. But the point is really pointing to have a secure cloud and also allowing enterprises to use AI in an affordable and secure way. So if you can just move, well, it's our starting point, of course, is the security. I don't have to say too much about the security. It's a very recognized problem. But just to tell you as an example of Italy, while Italy is contributing to 0.7% of the population in the world and 1.8% of the GDP globally, we see, according to the, it's not myself telling you, the report concluded at the end of last year, Italy is counting 10% of the global cyber attacks. And so Italy is overexposed in terms of cybersecurity. And maybe France and Germany are around 3 and 4%. So we are seeing really a problem. And also, on the other hand, also they are pointing that this security problem is costing on average 50,000 euro for an SME. So it's a concrete problem, and companies have to think about, right? So we are here to solve that problem. And if you just go, the idea, of course, is to think about how we can provide solutions for data protection in all those forms. So, for example, data in use, data in transit, and data at rest. And we want also to protect with the confidential computing also data in use. So we encrypt the applications, the software when this is running. So the RAM, you cannot see the memory, nobody can see, neither the hyperscaler, nobody. So this is really what companies still lack to do, because we all know about protecting data and transfer, HTTPS, and also encrypting file storage, but not actually applications. And this is very much important also for some regulations, the general regulations, the GDPR, but also new other sector regulation like DORA for financial services or MDR. Vertical segments really need, this is a business critical for them, and then for our customers. Okay, so also we want to be open and secure. We'll show you a project that we are running in Torino, in a city where I'm living. And also we would like to provide them digital sovereignty, end-to-end. So from silicon to the bit, to the application. So if you can just, but there is a problem. Let's not hide the problems. Honestly, the problem is generally about the adoption for the SMEs. This is actually at least what we are trying to interpret from the situation. I totally agree there is a lack of awareness, also maybe skills and competencies for standardization. Nobody to blame, but it's also our goal to educate and to share and increase the awareness. And also our customers. I tell also myself, this is also my goal, right? Because we have to make them aware of the problems of the security. Do you remember the cost? It's also something very pragmatic. And also for us, for standardization bodies, there is a choice. Should we, as an SME, cover those bodies? Okay, personally speaking, I'm a little bit lucky because I have also other hat today. I'm not representing the standard body, but I have the pleasure to be chairman of ETSI-MEC, so I have a longer experience on standardization. But I do see a problem for SMEs when I try to engage them, because it's an open environment, but maybe there is a roadblock for cost reasons, but sometimes it's not really the cost of a membership, or maybe just the cost of effort putting a person that can cover, and also the skills, because it's a particular job, right? And then I believe as an SME, instead you have to think about if it's really this is for you a cost, or rather instead a long-term investment. If you I was invited to a security forum in Rome past month. I was telling guys, let's choose if we want to really passively receive those regulations and then, let's say, complain about we have to be compliant, or maybe trying to be proactive and go in the tables and have our say and try to influence. That would be wonderful, but it's a decision, a priority to invest as a long-term perspective, as a strategy, right? It is costing because you have to educate your employees to take time to enter to this kind of particular job and try to understand how to influence the standardization.
I want to intervene, Dario, because
Yes.
I think you raised a very important point,
Okay.
which also reflects a little bit what we've heard from Barbara, that there is lack of understanding among our companies that this is an investment worth doing, so participating in standards, right? And for your company, it's for you to participate, for you to use standards in your own company solution, and also educate clients about this and importance of your standards.
I can show you, for
Here is
example, in my team, I'm
exactly.
not the only one. I have my manager, which is actually leading a special task force on Cyber Resilience Act. This is very important for the 80%, if I'm not mistaken, of the connected products in Europe. I can be mistaken about the numbers, but it's really important for companies. And we are struggling to engage actively all the stakeholders, but it's dramatically important, and also maybe they want to have their say, right, and influence the standards. So it's that's a
This
common.
is why I wanted to.
Yes.
I will intervene a bit
Please.
because since it's ETSI standard and ETSI work that Dario reflects on, Jan, could you maybe comment a little bit more on how do you see SME engagement in ETSI? Do you think there are SMEs that are willing to invest, and what are main ways that ETSI standards help SMEs to be more competitive?
Yeah, so thank you. So thank you for being here. I think this is a dialogue to have right. The timing is absolutely right. I think if you look from the European SME point of view, I mean, the major number of tech SMEs in Europe are active in the IT sector. And the IT sector has to undergo quite a big transformation due to the regulatory frameworks being developed, etc. Interoperability will become key. We see that in the development of cybersecurity, in AI, data was mentioned here by Dario, also other areas. And interoperability means standardization. So be compliant with standards and also be taking part and influence the standards is becoming key. Now, how can ETSI help in this? I mean, just to recap a little bit, ETSI was set up in the late 80s to sort of secure that Europe took the leadership globally in telecommunication and in particular digital mobile communication. So ETSI was set up with that specific purpose, drive the competitiveness of European industry globally. That became a great success. GSM was adopted globally, and that has led to the formation of 3GPP, standardizing 3G, 4G, 5G, and now 6G, and Europe is still in the lead. We have replicated that success story for other segments in ETSI following that, and now we are sort of working in general, not only with telecommunication, but with digital technology in general. So AI, cybersecurity, quantum, etc. Now, what are the sort of specifics of the ETSI model? I mean, we have a direct participation model, so our members are taking part in our work on equal terms, whether you're an SME or large corporation, if you're a government institution, research institution, academia, etc. All are taking part in our work on equal terms. All our standards are available free of charge. So you don't even have to be an ETSI member to get access to our standards. They are accessible on our website. We are serving two roles together with Sensenelec. We are developing harmonized standards for market access to the European market. That represents about 15 to 20% of the work we're doing. The remaining 80% is the work we're doing industry-driven with global standardization development. So we are global in our own regard. We are not sort of serving under any international system like ISO, IEC, or ITU. Our standards have a global uptake by themselves. And there are many examples of standards. I think Barbara actually mentioned the work that we have done on digital identities, etc., which is sort of adopted in India. We have many other standards, Tetra, DECT, that are also adopted globally. So I think we are sort of have a global impact and being a global SDO in our own regard. We have 950 members across the world, so 64 countries, 5 continents. The membership from SMEs, we have 27% of our members as SMEs, so we have a very large participation of SMEs in the work we're doing. We have one example here, but you're not the only one, gladly. And the reason for that is that sort of the entry barrier for SMEs into our work is very low. We have a membership fee structure which sort of favors small micro enterprises and small and medium-sized enterprises. I mean, the membership fee yearly is about €3,000 to take part in ETSI's work, and then you have full access to all the work we're doing. So that is a little bit sort of the model in itself. And then when it comes to, in particular, sort of engaging with SMEs and helping SMEs, I mean, the fee structure is one portion. We also have educational programs. We have worked together with Digital SME Alliance to sort of have a tailored training program that is available free of charge to SMEs to help sort of the competence development for SMEs on how to engage in standards. We also have our own funding program, which is called STF, so Specialist Task Forces, where we can fund individual companies and members to do standardization work, in particular attractive for SMEs. And we have many, many micro-enterprises and SMEs sort of taking part in the work under funded terms. There is, of course, also ASMEA calls from EU-funded activities for specific standardization activities that we are sort of managing and having open calls. And we also see a large portion of SMEs taking part in that work. So looking at sort of the ETSI work, I mean, we see SMEs are really integrated and working very closely together with the big players. And of course, being part of a big ecosystem like ETSI and work together with technology leaders and other large corporations and basically all stakeholders in the ecosystem is a way of getting access to latest technology trends, to knowledge, build your market, sort of also understand the competitiveness of your product, etc. So there's a lot of benefits from taking part in standardization work.
Do you have example of ETSI standard that promotes competitiveness among SMEs?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to sort of finish off my sort of plea for ETSI first. So I mean, ETSI is really a successful platform to drive European competitiveness out on a global scale. We have many, many success stories of that. Now we are sort of entering into this transformation area, and I think Barbara alluded to the geopolitical issues as well. We have recently been explicitly referenced in the EU Republic of Korea Digital Partnership Project from their latest council meeting last Friday, where ETSI is explicitly referenced as being the platform to do standardization in the technology areas covered by that partnership. So it shows sort of that ETSI's model is recognized and seen as successful in the current geopolitical landscape. Now SMEs are engaged in a lot of our work. I mean, we have many examples of success stories, especially in the digital signing solutions and digital identities. The chairman of our technical committee was sort of an SME, and he developed a solution in Italy, I think, for notaries based on his work in ETSI, and that became sort of one of the dominating solutions in Italy, in the Italian market. We have a French SME that has been working with digital architecture for digital mission-critical communication systems, so blue light type of systems, and due to their engagement through ETSI, they got sort of contracts with other larger corporations that was part in the same ETSI work, and by that they secured many contracts with the governments, etc. Also in cybersecurity, there is a Finnish small startup that has gained quite a lot of market share due to the work in ETSI TC Cyber. So I think we have many success stories in ETSI on how SMEs have sort of, by taking part in standardization, grown the market, found customers, and sort of secure that they are an integrated component in a larger solution. So ETSI's model is actually working very well. And a little bit sort of coming back to the problems, sort of problem statement around the European standardization system, I think a comment to Federico. I think ETSI's model has a lot of answers to the problems that we have identified. So I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I think these were some very interesting examples for all of us to hear and know about. But of course, it's not all about only ETSI, right, Andrea? So do you have some more examples to add, some ideas of how Senelec support competitiveness of SMEs in Europe?
Thank you very much, Justina. I have the feeling I'm like in between SBS and ETSI, so... and first of all, thank you very much for also organizing this very timely debate. I think both Digital SME Alliance and SBS, we work very closely together. You're both also part of our SME working group that we have with our members. it's good to have this discussion because Europe is driven by SMEs, and I think here we have a shared goal, even if our models are different between Sensenelec and ETSI, we have a shared goal to make standards as inclusive as possible and to be reflective of SME needs and also work for SMEs once they reach the market. I think there are some differences that don't diminish the participation of SMEs in Sensenelec. Of course, we're a national standards organization based organization. So our strive, and I think Jon mentioned that as well, is that there is engagement of SMEs at a national level, and that then we reinforce those links at the European level with the cooperation we have with SBS as well. I think we touched a lot on the contribution of SMEs. I think and the example was very clear of why it's important to invest in standardization. And we do realize, of course, that standardization is an investment. It's an investment in terms of resources, and SMEs sometimes are only 2-3 people. It's an investment in terms of time. It's an investment in terms of participation as well, because standardization takes some time. But I think that comes at a balance that we have now in discussion as well with the European Commission. We need to be faster, but we don't want to be faster at the expense of inclusiveness and making sure that we do have and go through this process of SME contribution. I think to your very specific question, I mean, I think in the long term, there is, we have clarity, we have interoperability, we have simplification of policy requirements through standardization when SMEs contribute. I think we have some very good examples where we worked together with SBS as well on making a checklist on how to test that standards are SME inclusive, and SBS has that checklist based on Guide 17. I agree, and I like the fact you're giving us homework as well. We need to promote that better to our technical committees. We need to be more strict about the inclusion of SME needs in our technical work. But in terms of where we are with SMEs, and I think examples we have, and we do have this funded through the European Commission, the contribution of SBS experts, I think in over 50 technical committees. They're maybe working together on prioritization, on which technical committees are more relevant, which not, is important, because the world of standardization is very vast. I think we're talking in Sensenelec, and I'm sure ETSI is equally large numbers. I mean, we have over 500 technical committees working on a lot of different subjects. So seeing where do we need to prioritize, where do we need to put our efforts in, where do we need to take our European voice at the international level is very important. And I think that's where we need to improve together, I would say. Now, from very concrete examples, I mean, here there's been a very digital discussion. There are some concrete standards where SBS has contributed, and you were mentioning as well the tools that we have put in place, like the right for opinion or certain specific, very, very concrete inputs to our standardization work, particularly in the energy sector. I mean, we have some standards that have been revised and driven by SMEs for energy audits, energy management systems. So there is also a lot of work outside necessarily the digital scope, which of course is very much the topic of today, where we see SMEs' contribution as critical for the work in Sensenelec. But then, I mean, I'm sure there'll be some other opportunities to pick here and there on some examples and some concrete things that we can do further for SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So I think one that is among us a bit outcaster, Alessandro, because we are all here standards and standards bodies. You, on the other hand, do not participate directly in standardization, but nevertheless you find standards very useful, and standards one of the reasons that helped your company to grow and participate in public tenders. So can you tell us a little bit on how did that develop and what standard you're using? And what happened there?
Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, it's a very interesting discussion. I think that starting from the point that I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company, and of course, as well as Dario, I mean, we are running day by day our business activities. So the first problem that you have is time. We don't have time. And basically investing one day or a couple of days in discussing in Brussels for us means maybe losing 50K, 100K, 200K, 1 million. It depends from the size of the company, of revenues, of course. So the reason why it's difficult to say, okay, we can participate in something and try to influence that is exactly that we don't have time. And the risk of that, we know it very well, is that if you don't have some structures or someone that can help you in managing that stuff, you lose all the leverage that you might have in order to change the things. So that's extremely critical, especially because I think that we have almost clear now that without a technology ecosystem in Europe, basically we're going to lose in any sector, in any area, in everything. And so finding the right balance of creating standards that can support this, but at the same time not having time for supporting the real developing ecosystem of people like us that are doing stuff, it's the challenging part. Now, what we actually did on our case, just to start from that, and maybe we can also open up a little bit the discussion, was of course to take the ISO as an opportunity to do a couple of things. So now I want to give you a couple of examples. In our case, specifically in Cabit case, what we do as a company is a geo-distributed cloud storage system, which means that basically you can act as a player that gives you way more security in how to store the data. The core technology of what we do is basically taking a file, splitting and encrypting the file, so you just create these bytes of information, and then you distribute the file all over a network. Which means that it gives you a lot of security. You can lose pieces of the information, but still retrieving the entire information, which means that basically you are guaranteeing more resiliency on a system, which is very connected also with the ISO and all the activities related to that. Now, what we basically did was starting to switch this approach into some industries that were more keen to have this kind of resiliency, but at the same time were kind of far away from the fastest sales cycle that you can expect. One of those was healthcare, for example. Another one was a specific niche of the defense industry, and so on and so forth. So what we basically did was to implement this ISO standard in order to be able to sell into this industry, and it was extremely relevant for us. It accelerated also the fact that we were able to get a faster certification for the National Cybersecurity Agency, without which we were not able to deliver at the end the product and the solution. And so that's my, for example, case. The other one that I wanted to bring you, just because a couple of days ago, a friend of mine, co-founder of another very fast-growing company in Italy called Jet HR, so in the HR space, for example, he posted this thing, and so we discussed a little bit, and he said, like, I started doing the ISO, just a kind of bureaucratic damn stuff that I needed to do for something, and I figured out that at the end of the day it was a very useful way in order to put some order internally and at the same time to promoting better externally what we were building. So it's of course an investment that you have to deliver, but at the same time you get advantage on that. Now the challenge, and that's just for ending this step into this, is of course how can we use it for the main purpose that we all have, I guess, which is to deliver a better ecosystem, technology ecosystem for Europe. That's my point, that I want to try to create a connection. So how can we develop also the new standards in a way that can support the growth of these SMEs? Because my point on that, which is the critical part, is that we are not SMEs because we just want to maintain the status for the rest of our life. We aim to become bigger and bigger. That's the purpose of a company, to grow. So if we don't find ways to collaborate together in order to have this, you cannot just have an investment just out of something that is helpful. You need to do an investment because it will grow your business. So having the deep discussion on that, I think it's the best part of what we can do in the near future.
Splendid. Thank you very much for this, Alessandro. I think you raised a lot of points that I want to tackle a bit with all the speakers. So I will ask everyone for a bit of quick reactions because we don't have so much time, and I like many of your points, to be honest. So maybe we can start with this point that you mentioned, that company needs to grow, and company is primarily busy with that. So you don't have standards, time, resources, and so on to spend on participating in standards. So question maybe for all, I don't know who wants to start to reflect a bit on this. How can we help companies like Alessandro? How can we do kind of both? How can we be piece of puzzle, but meanwhile keeping running the company? I don't know if anyone wants to. Okay, you can start, Dario, and I see Jan also wants to react.
Well, small comment. I totally agree. When there is some business need, the standard can help also to be compliant and let's say to put order inside the company, but also to better promote the products and the solutions to the customer. And but for the standardization, sometimes, and Alessandro, you are right, it's about time. It's really a challenge to calibrate how you can afford. In a small company, you have more constrained resources, right? So, but really, so for me, the key is to be really laser focused with what is needed for the business. And then the problem is working on standards that matter for your business. So not just producing paper, which is maybe there, it's elegant to show, but something business critical because I need it for compliance to put in my product and my solutions into the market. And this is then when you, because I see also as a chairman, for a standard body, right? And I have the pleasure to be the chairman of a big group in terms of membership and about 200 members and participants in ETSI. But actually the real truth is that let's say only a small part of people is active. It's like the Pareto rules for mathematicians. The 20% of the people is doing the 80% of the job and vice versa. This is actually a sort of postulate of the universe. Okay, we have to live with that. But the point is, if we stick to the work which is really business critical for us, then we cannot see lack of let's say, presence of companies that are really there because there is a business need. Something in the agenda of their business units. It's more likely the case for bigger companies because they have more resources, but really there is an opportunity also for smaller. So I totally agree.
Thank you, Jan.
Yes, so just so I think it's a question about mindset. I think, of course, if you see standards as a strictly compliance topic, then I agree it's a cost. But if you see standards as a means of growing a business, then it's part of your business development. And then it's handled differently from an investment point of view in your company, I'm sure. And then, of course, I mean, how can we help? I mean, low barriers for entry, so it's as low cost as possible, as mentioned, I mean, membership fees, etc. But also be more sort of guiding in what funding instruments that can be available. It does not necessarily mean that you yourself have to attend standards meetings, right? You can maybe subcontract a consultant that is partly funded through some funding program that is doing work on your behalf. So I think it's this mindset that I think is part of the solution.
Go ahead, of course.
Thank you. I had to write down and then I remembered something else. So I will focus on three things. I think one, prioritization is critical because the world of standardization is very big. You were mentioning ISO. I didn't even go into the international. So I think combining European and international standardization work, I can imagine it can be overwhelming, but that's part of the prioritization exercise. A second point is use industry associations. I think that is very, very important. They exist at the national level, they exist at the European level. And they can be the multiplier. They can be the voice of contributing to standardization at the national level, in UNI, in CEI, in Italy, they can contribute to the European level. I think for the European Association there, the frame that we have today for Annex 3, the investment and the funding that the European Commission gives ensures that contribution. So I think also using this multiplier effect of associations that represent your interests in standardization, because that's their job, that's their role, that's our role as associations, I think it's another aspect to consider. And then my third point is, and Jan touched on the funding mechanism, but I would like to extend that a bit to certain projects that we have currently ongoing. We have Stand ICT, we have CyberStand, we have Horizon Europe programs that are giving money and putting money and investment to support SMEs to contribute to standardization at the European and the international level. And I think that's also a mechanism that we need to better exploit and maybe also align in the next framework program, but to also use European funding for these contributions.
Thank you. I think another important point, you really drive the discussion, is that you chose to use ISO standards. And of course, naturally, we have some international standards that we use and many SMEs find helpful. But here I'm also having this question based on what Barbara told to us. So what can we do that more European standards could be actually used globally by many companies in Asia, in Africa, all around the globe? Because how could we do this, the other way around?
Yeah, exactly. And especially there's this balance. And sorry, it was a question? No. Oh, sorry, no.
But please, yes, please. No, go ahead.
I thought
They
that
all
was
have
an
ideas.
open one.
No,
Sorry.
it's a question, absolutely.
No, I forgot the answer now. So.
So maybe you try to remember and you want to comment, someone?
That is actually a very tricky question, because in many sectors we may be lagging behind. But I think that there is an enormous value in recognizing Europe as a unit and a coordinating approach. I think that if we want to be also global, our main competitors, they have industrial policies set for decades in one direction. And I think that in Europe, we lack the capacity so far to align ourselves fully in saying whether we want to go. And once we do that and we put the resources there, then we can make sure that our companies have the access to the different fora where we're developing standards. And in that frame, also our SMEs, that in many areas may be having top technologies. But if I may, just one thing referring to the previous question, I think is very important, because we're talking about prioritization, lesser focus, and access to the technical committees and the time for SMEs. I think that it is our responsibility and the trade organizations, the associations, to train SMEs on the actual impact they can create when they implement the standards. I think that we often go too theoretical. We have to bring examples and look, indeed, for this person, the challenge to access the market was this, or the main element is this, and that's how they solve it with the standards. And I think that we have to do better in that.
Jan wants to comment, of course.
Yes, I mean, being a little bit maybe arrogant and blunt, but come do the work in Etsy. That is the answer. Because we are global. We have global participation, and our standards are taken up globally. And we are an industry-driven organization. I mean, the industry is really direct members in Etsy and are setting the pace. And by that, we also are more agile and a bit more faster in the work we're doing. Thank you.
Alessandro, did you remember what you wanted to say?
No, it's fine. The only point that I wanted to raise is that for a small company, so you have these two angles. Creating influence on the standards, and this is part of the investment. Then you have the return on investment that you want to get from the investment that you made. So the balance of the two parts is that on one side, what you really need as a company is differentiation. And so standard as a concept is the opposite, if you want, of differentiation. So what you need to do, and what we need to find, I expect, is to say that if we create standards that are able to create for a period of time a kind of differentiation, now we are supporting the European companies in doing something. And it's what happened for so many standards. So the fact that at the beginning, you started moving toward the standard, the procurement, the activities, whatever it was, and through that you created competitiveness into the system. That's the main difficulty of that, because the inclusiveness is correct. Otherwise, it's not a standard concept. But a small or medium business that is creating a disruptive technology or whatever wants to try to understand if he can get some competitive advantage, because otherwise it would not be involved into the process itself. I know that it's challenging and I may be provocating a little bit into this, but it's for a purpose, it's not for...
Of course. Federico, did you also want to make a reaction?
Yes.
Because we will also need to finish at some point.
No, I will try to, from the angle, of course, of the Commission, and certainly in the context of the current ongoing, started revision of the standardization regulation, we consider inclusiveness as an added value. It was clear that the regulation in 2012, when they introduced this as a principle, it has had the positive result. We see, and I agree with those who said that it's the most inclusive system probably in the world. I think part of this, I don't think the regulation should take all the credit, but part of this was also thanks to the conditions and provision introduced by the regulation. Nevertheless, the evaluation has highlighted room for improvement, also thanks to the work done, for instance, in the workstream 3 or 4. I don't remember, one of the workstream of the high-level forum. And this is something we already said we want to try to increase in the revision of the regulation. Of course, we cannot impose by law to the expert from the SMEs to participate to the standardization activities. I understand that there are regions in the world where if the party governing says you should participate, experts participate very voluntarily. This is not a European system, so we have to create a system of incentives and facilitation to lower the bar that. For us, in particular, when it comes to SMEs, their participation is important for two reasons. So, for the other societal stakeholders, we mean consumers, for environmental NGOs, and for workers, the added value of their inclusion into the process is that the final product takes into account their needs. In the end, it becomes a better product. In the case of SMEs, of course, if the standard is well developed, an SME can use it perfectly well for the products, so as a user of the standard, even if they did not participate directly. For us, however, there is an essential element. There is a principle: standards must be technology neutral, meaning that they should not lock in or a preference for a certain technology, so they should leave the room for new innovative technology to be placed quickly on the market, without the need to change the standards necessarily, because otherwise they would not be able to claim presumption of conformity with the law, etc. So, and this is something that we also verify. I mean, when we talk about our verification directly by the HAS consultant, people think, and to a certain extent they might also be right, that we are looking into the legal or legalistic parts. We are looking also into these elements. In a few occasions, we have spotted cases where we contested the fact that the standard as it had been designed was not technology neutral. There was usually some elements that went beyond the legislation, so sort of gold plating, which, however, were much more difficult to fulfill for SMEs, for smaller companies, than for bigger companies. In that case, we contested and we refused. So where we spotted, and we tried to intervene. But frankly, SMEs are best suited and best placed to spot these cases than us. We might also miss something in given we are not market actors. One, I heard about possible tools. They will be different. There is not one single silver bullet. I heard financing, which is always nice to have, but to be honest, it's always difficult to get more money, and in the current context, you can imagine getting money we would be already very happy if we managed to keep more or less the same dimension that we have now of standardization budget line. We are asking for more, but the negotiation in the coming 2 years for the new, MFF, the financial framework, will be very tough. There is little money, little appetite to increase the budget, and a big fight to allocate it where it is most urgently needed. And so there I have to manage expectation, and there is an element which, however, I would call subsidiarity, because something can be done in terms of financing or even actions from the central level, so the European Union, but there is a role there to be played also at national level. Some member states do, some others don't, but I think we should explore also a combination of when it comes to financing, but also when it comes to provisions, facilitating access. And I think, having worked for an SME myself before entering the Commission, so I know a little bit the context in which there is a dedicated article, Article 6 of the regulation, which provides it lists a number of facilitations that NSB can, it's not so strictly binding, but can give to SMEs. One of them, for instance, typically, that I would have appreciated when I was an SME is that access to draft standards for free. Finland, for instance, does it. If I'm an SME, I know there is a standardization activity ongoing that might be relevant for my product, for my sector. If I have this possibility offered by national standardization bodies to just go online and check, oh, okay, if there is no problem, then no need for me to intervene or spend more time on it. If I spot something, however, then this could trigger an action directly by an industry association, you name it. But these are small things that on their own will not solve all the problems, but there are all facilitating elements. And we are really looking into the possibility to work on Article 6 and to maybe see how it can be strengthened. And this would apply, of course, at the level of the national standardization bodies, because it is true, the national standardization bodies have mirror committees, they follow the activities which happen at European and international level. They can act as a facilitator, if not for direct participation, but for indirect participation and influence also by the SMEs in all member states. So that's a little bit how we look at it.
Thank you, Federico, very much. I'm getting sign that we really need to finish. So, Jon, I'm sorry, I will not let you react to this, but I will ask another question, which is our closing question. So I ask you all to give me one sentence, if you can, a thinking exercise. And Jon, we can start with you. Maybe you can somehow connect the points. I will tell you what I want to hear. So if we are 5 years from now on, Commission made magic steps to change the system. What would be that one thing that you would say that made all the difference for SMEs?
I would say that for us is reinforce the bottom-up approach in the standard. Thank you, Andrea. I think that if we are able to nail down the improvement of the system, what would be happening is that SMEs that matter are involved in the standardization from the national to the European level, so that at the end we can use the compatibility test and all other standards are compliant with what is a good standard for SMEs.
Perfect. Andrea, do you have your point?
Yes, I do, but mine is more generic in 5 years.
Absolutely, yes.
I think now we have the opportunity with the revision of Regulation 1025 to really clarify and take as much into account as we possibly can to improve the current system, not completely redo it, but improve the current system, so that in 5 years' time we don't go back and go, we missed something.
We
need to revise it again. So I think let's do it once and let's do it correctly and right.
Dario.
Well, I can provide, let's say, some statement from my perspective as an SME. For us, for my company, the standardization activity is not just a long-term investment for us, but also a long-term investment for our customer. If we provide the intelligence, because it's an investment there, they have to build their cloud, it's costly, and then we provide insights and we say, this is a long-term view. This is a safe way for you to put your money, and then you are safe because you are compliant. So for this is a long-term investment for them as well.
Moving 10 billions of procurement to build 100 unicorns, new unicorns in Europe.
Super.
As easy as that.
Super. Jan, your final word?
Yeah, I think final word. I think ETSI, I mean, we are really working closely with SMEs already. So, I mean, we don't really have a problem with that from a model point of view. But what I would like to see emphasized in the European standardization strategy is how we drive global competitiveness, not only focusing on the internal markets. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all speakers. Thank you very much. And I hope we take away your one sentences in 5 years. We see a system in which SMEs want and can participate, and Europe all together with all the players involved is globally competitive. So thank you very much.
Thank you.